Hi, I'm Anthony Ha, the Vice President of Content at ENIAC Ventures, and I'm here with Chieh Huang, the co-founder and CEO of one of our portfolio companies, Boxed. Chieh, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Anthony, and obviously congratulations on the move you made. We've known each other for a few years now since your TechCrunch days. So always a fan, always reading your stuff, and now excited to see what type of content you're going to produce for ENIAC.
Yeah, I'm excited to be figuring that out, and I'm appreciate that you are helping us figure that out and joining me today. We're going to be talking a bit about the past because, a little bit of a spoiler, this is going to be a little bit of a victory lap. We don't want to like count chickens where they're hatched, et cetera, but I know that all the partners at ENIAC are really, really excited about what is happening with Box right now. But let's start with, sort of the origin story. I mean, tell me a little bit about, or really tell our viewers a little bit about the decision to start Boxed in the first place.
Yeah, and I can hopefully provide some additional context and content that usually, no one ever asks us about, but we were just talking about this right before, Anthony, is that actually, if you rewind the clock back to 2009, that's when really kind of I, as well as the rest of the original founding team of Box, got into tech in New York City. And back then, it was kind of like a wasteland of kind of startups, meaning that there wasn't the type of scale, there wasn't the type of funding just available that there is today. We were just saying that, back then it was like Tumblr, you had fab.com was at its peak then. And so outside of that though, and outside of a handful of companies, you didn't have the massive unicorns that you have today. So we threw our hat in the ring. Back then we did a mobile gaming startup on this thing called the iPhone that was just coming out at the time. And we had good success. We raised money, ended up being acquired by Zynga, and then became Zynga Mobile New York for a few years. Coming out of that experience, we thought, okay, well, we got the iPhone kind of trend correct. We think that knowledge for mobile will be really powerful for something even bigger, and that's commerce and consumer packaged goods via online commerce. And so that was the genesis, and that was the original idea for Boxed.
Right. Well, I'm curious, did you, going from gaming into this whole other field, e-commerce, did you have any trepidation about making that shift?
I did. Maybe I should have had more because, it's funny because, and bless the ENIAC guys' hearts for not kind of bringing too much, not sticking it to us too much when we were raising money. But one of our original angels, who was a very successful operator through multiple very famous companies, when we told him what we were up to, and he knew us as a team already, and he said like, what? Hey, time out, guys. You guys are movers of bits and bytes. What you're proposing is becoming movers of atoms, physical atoms across the country. You better be damn sure you want to do this, because it is a different game. And to his credit, years later, it was a different game. Luckily, it wasn't rocket science, and that a lot of the infrastructure of moving atoms around the country had already been kind of paved. And so, a few tough lessons, but we got rocking pretty early on moving those atoms across the country.
Right. And I believe that you actually knew or at least some of the ENIAC partners before you started Box, when you were on the gaming side. So when did that relationship turn into a, hey, do you guys want to write us a check?
Oh gosh, I feel like I was introduced to the ENIAC crowd via multiple different people. I remember, I feel like I was introduced to Vic actually in the very beginning. And then I think separately I was introduced to Nahal. And then later on, Tim and Hadley. So when we were still at Zynga, that's when I was introduced to that group. So I remember ENIAC was still just starting up. And then also, Vic was still operating his own company at that time too. So, and I thought it was so special because, the thesis that they had or kind of them as a group, having known each other for so long was really interesting to see. And then also having each GP or general partner as an operator, I thought was also really interesting. So that stuck out at me. And so when we started Boxed, I remember calling them back and saying, okay, that was really interesting. I wonder if the ENIAC thing is still going on. And then, luckily it was still going on, and they wrote us a check.
That's awesome. And I mean, it's interesting you talk about their operator background, because I think, something that has been an ongoing conversation in the venture world, and moving into the seed side as well, is sort of, what is the value of the investor? Is it really more about the check, and should you just optimize for price, or does the partner provide value? And it seems like I hear again and again this idea that actually, yeah, every VC says they're going to be this incredible partner, but they're not. That doesn't always work out.
Wait,
and
that's not the case?
At the risk of obviously I'm tooting my boss's horn here, but it sounds like that actually that wasn't the relationship in ENIAC. It was actually more active and positive than that.
Yeah, I think the key thing for ENIAC that I really like to this day, and why, if I ever did anything else, like I would absolutely call them again, is the fact that being operators, they understand that you're thinking about this 28 hours a day. And there are little things that, yes, if you read a piece of paper of what the status is, you can kind of know what's going on in the board decks or whatever else. But really, there's little things, like little just bits of information that don't, or little bits of data that don't make it into the actual explanation of what's going on, that only the operator at the wheel kind of knows and is kind of processing. And so I feel like ENIAC understood that, and was largely hands-off, meaning that they were like, hey, call us if you need anything. We'll check in once in a while, but really call us if you need anything. And then, of course, if things are going sideways, then you're going to get more engagement from us. But we trust you to do your thing, and we're here if you need anything. And they were absolutely good on that.
Right. And I'd love to then maybe kind of fast forward a little bit to the last couple of years at Boxed, and maybe one way to sort of capture that is just the very well-placed view that we have behind you, which I was lucky actually to visit one of your facilities a couple of years ago when I was at TechCrunch. But talk a little bit about going, as you've told the story many times, about starting from your garage, and what does a Boxed facility look like now? I get the sense that it's pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I hope every kind of founder watching this or every investor watching this has the ability to experience it in their lifetime, because, just going from like such humble beginnings to getting to pretty good scale and automation, it's such an exciting journey, and one that I don't take for granted, meaning that every time I walk through the doors, any doors in our fulfillment centers, or actually any office, I feel this rush of like, man, like this is just so special, like just this ride we've been on. But you're exactly right. We started the company. I'm in New Jersey now, probably 15 minutes down the road here in Edison, New Jersey, in a 2-car garage, which looked nothing like what you see behind me today. No automation, frankly, no racks even. We just put stuff like in my living room when we first started, and then we packed in the garage. And then sure enough, we started building racks with these kind of random plastic shelves we bought at the local hardware store, and then got more and more sophisticated. And years later, here we are. Now, the fun thing is exactly what you said was true as well. Our newest fulfillment center is actually not the one behind me. Our newest fulfillment center is actually automated by our own robots that we build here, and we ship to those parts of the country. So even what you see behind me has since evolved, and that constant evolution is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that also touches on something that I would imagine a lot of founders, especially if they're lucky enough to have a high growth, successful company, have to deal with, is just the fact of growth and the change for I imagine when you were making shipments out of your garage, you had a handle on the business and understand the business. Maybe it didn't feel that way, but like, that you would get literally touching every part of the business in a way that I imagine there's large swaths of what's happening in the fulfillment center behind you that you have no idea what's going on. How do you deal with that as a founder and CEO?
Oh man, like what you just said it resonates so much with me, because it's so true. Like, and something that I've kind of dealt with over the years. There's obviously, everyone knows that there's a saying like scale is hard. Living that, I can confirm that scale is hard. So it's for the reasons you just said. When you're early on, you're touching everything, like physically touching everything, like meaning that, customer service, if you need help, you can go and answer tickets or something goes wrong with packing, you can make sure you pack the next 10 boxes. A lot of orders, yeah, you can go in and pick the orders. All those different things you can physically will into the right momentum and into the right kind of path. At some point in time, there's no amount of willing and you doing anything that will affect the trajectory of the business. It is the systems, processes, and the people that you hire that you have to, control and kind of make sure you have the right systems in place. Not control, but have the right systems in place in order for them to directly touch the business. And so, and then as you get bigger and bigger to scale, the levels of removal that you are from the actual touching of the boxes and the actual levers of the business become more and more distant, and that becomes really, really hard.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, another thing that's happened recently is we've all gone through the incredible tragedy of the pandemic, but I imagine from a business perspective, I mean, there were all kinds of challenges, but also opportunities because, you are an e-commerce company, and I think there's certainly been a lot of interest in that. But what the moment we're in now, I mean, there's a great deal of uncertainty because of variants and things like that. But people are starting to think about what does the sort of post-pandemic world look like. So for Box, what do you think are the elements of growth and change that are going to stay in place, and what are the things that might potentially go back to normal?
Yeah, I think the elements of growth and change will be the kind of the trajectory of the adoption of online grocery. I just think that is here to stay. We're not on the same toward pace. I don't think no one in the industry is, as we were, say, April of 2020, when it was a true panic buying across the globe. At the same time, though, what you're finding is the adoption rate of that is forever changed. Adoption rate of this category online is forever changed. So I think we'll continue to see the B2C tailwinds from that. I think some of the other things that we're looking forward to in terms of the change in the future is the B2B rebound. So meaning that we have this business where pre-COVID, we were about a quarter in B2B. So a quarter of our business was actually in B2B. As you can imagine, B2C, huge tailwinds, B2B, huge headwinds in 2020. Our big customers, our SMBs, no one was basically ordering from us at that time. So seeing the rebound of that, I think will be very, very important. Also, the demographics shift of who's starting to buy these items online will be also an interesting trend. So as you can imagine, Anthony, your neighbors and my neighbors in Manhattan and New York, probably they all knew that you could buy this stuff online. They probably all have tried buying these categories online, even pre-pandemic. I think when you're looking at that increase in overall penetration, it's not the random person in Tribeca in New York City or the person on Market Street in San Francisco thinking, oh my gosh, wait, I can order groceries online. It's actually an audience, whether it's older in demographic, more rural in demographic, or geographic kind of location, that's starting to come online. And I think some of those trends will be really interesting to see.
Right. And you mentioned the B2B side of the business, and just to sort of dig into that a little bit more, as I understand it, what that essentially means is just in the same way that you or I might be buying some of our groceries from Boxed, a company, even a large enterprise could be buying their groceries as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I should have done a better job of explaining it, but you're exactly right. So we have this phenomenon that, it's become pretty mainstream to provide coffee and light snacks to employees. Like that before, that used to be just in the tech companies like Google. Oh, what, they provide coffee and snacks? What is that about? That's trickled down mainstream into the whole kind of, not whole, but it's no longer crazy to be offered coffee in your workplace anymore. Now, what's interesting is that offers a really good opportunity for us because, these offices generally want items in bulk because they're just churning through so much of it. And so, a lot of the office managers are more worried about coffee than they are about printer paper and laser toner and ink cartridges. So, the traditional B2B names, probably not as salient in their minds when they think about restocking for the office. So case in point, anyone watching this, if your office, when you go back, if it runs out of copy paper, most folks are just like, oh, well, I probably didn't need to print it anyway, or I could print it tomorrow, whatever. If your office runs out of coffee, that place is going to burn down by 5 p.m. People are going to walk out the door. Productivity is going to drastically drop. So, the changing of why folks are looking, or what people are looking for when it comes to B2B procurement, is starting to be a tailwind for us.
Right. That's certainly been true in my personal experience that I think about the last time I was in an office, which is a little bit of a distant memory now, but like I could go months without using the printer, but I always was in the coffee bar.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Like if you, so, you know, I don't know what people use. Like, what do you guys use at ENIAC? I'm sure Slack or something
Slack,
like.
yeah.
And so, you know, if there's a Slack company-wide message when everyone's back in the office, like, oh, we're out of ink, a laser toner for the printer. People are like, what? Like, okay, you know, probably didn't even Slack that, you know. But if people said like, there's no more coffee in the office, like, you're gonna get some reactions. Like, you're like, we'll say like, what? You know, like, say that again. Like, and so I think that's a trend that we're capitalizing on.
Yeah. So I also sort of buried the lead a little bit here because the big hook for what's happening with Box is the fact that you guys are going to be going public via SPAC. Tell me a little bit about that decision.
Yeah, it's a real evolution in the company, and even, you know, I feel like I'm learning something new every day, and kind of and it's exciting, you know, not only for the people at the company, but for me personally and professionally to develop into a public company executive. But overall, you know, with the SPAC kind of phenomenon going on, you know, we could do two main things, and it's the reason why we went via SPAC versus a traditional IPO route. One is the quantum of capital that we could raise. So, you know, depending on redemptions, it looks like, you know, we'll be able to raise up to over $300 million for our balance sheet. So that's something that we wouldn't be able to do in a regular IPO. And then two, we can tell the story a little bit better. So as I mentioned before, 2020 was like a real double-edged sword for us. Big B2C growth, big headwinds in B2B. So we can actually tell the story and project out to investors what the future looks like if B2B recovers, where, you know, traditionally in S1, you really couldn't tell that story as well.
Right. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Well, you know, you've been really generous with your time. I do want to ask you one more question before I let you go, which is that just sort of to cast your mind back to not talking to these public market investors, but to the ENIAC guys for the first time and the vision that you presented to them. To what extent do you feel like you have achieved that vision, and to what extent are there still things that you still want to do?
I feel like the vision was eventually to be a public company, because I felt like not just be able to ring the bell, but because I felt like most major e-commerce players or retailers have at some point in time accessed the public capital market. So I thought that would be a hallmark that we would have to kind of subscribe to as well. And so luckily on the cusp of our debut, here we are. So hopefully, knock on wood, that will stay true. I think the vision of being able to provide wholesale around the world, or access to wholesale around the world using our technology, there's still a few things I want to accomplish, and we want to accomplish. And I think using our technology is the key. So we not only sell the items to consumers and businesses, we're beginning to sell the software and the technology that powers our business to other businesses. And so I think that second part just launched this year. So I want to see that through before I can go back to the ENIAC kind of Monday morning meeting and say, all right, guys, you know, we did it. So I still feel like there's some work to do.
Awesome. Well, Chieh, thank you so much for your time today. And I know that everyone at ENIAC, for both personal and self-interested reasons, is going to be rooting for you very much in the months and the years to come.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony.